For us, we always love bringing in founders to share their experience, particularly for those that are getting started in their own journeys. And we're excited to have Liz Connolly, who's the president and one of the co-founders of Trifecta Nutrition. And so maybe for those that don't know about Trifecta, and if you don't, then you've missed a local success story, but nonetheless, maybe share a little bit about Trifecta, and then we'll get into your story and kind of launching it and going from there.
Cool. Sounds good. So Liz Connolly, nice to meet you guys. Trifecta is a company that my brother and I started about 9 years ago. It is a healthy meal delivery company, so now that you have been here, you will get ads for it at all times. I apologize. But we heavily focus on the health and fitness space. So that's really the problem that we're trying to solve, is to help get America back into shape. So everything we've done has kind of been with that lens, and just thinking through how we can do that. So that led us to do really healthy meal delivery, which when you think about meal delivery, it takes out all the like problems that people have when they're trying to eat healthy, which is like time, knowing what to eat is healthy, that would be healthy, all of that type of stuff. And then we also built an app so that you can track your nutrition and track your fitness. And you guys can come closer, by the way. I feel like it's so far away, you're not going to be able to hear me. I promise I'm trying to speak as loud as possible. So yeah, that's what Trifecta is, and we can, I don't know, dive into
the for sure. So you started the company in 2015.
Yep.
Like, what was the impetus for getting started? Like, was this just like a random brainstorming, or how did you identify this problem and get started in that process? Did you go seek resources, or what did that initial startup kind of process look like, and what did you do?
So I had been in a company here in town called POS Portal, and I had taken an idea from nothing to about $30 million, and I was like, oh, holy shit, I can do this. This isn't totally out of the realm of things under my purview that I can do. And so I started talking to my brother, who was running a company at the time already, and he had a few ideas, I had a few ideas, and then he came to me with the idea for Trifecta, and we both had this just enormous passion for the space. And so we started working on that together. I quit my job within 2 weeks of us talking about it. It was immediate.
That's awesome.
And we launched the site within a couple months, and right away it started outselling the company that he was running. So I don't know, 2-3 months in, it was already outselling his company, and he started focusing on it with me full time. So a lot of it was right place, right time. A meal delivery company at that time was not super common. There were some HelloFresh, so it wasn't a totally new thing, but it was early enough that it was very easy to get traction and get in front of a lot of people. We can dive into partnerships at some point, but that's really what kicked us off, is finding partnerships within the space so that we could, really propel growth and get in front of all these other audiences.
Nice. So you went from creating a website to selling. What was the initial product? Because you said you have an app, you have the food delivery. What was the first thing that you ultimately launched to market? And I'm going to click this real quick because I think it might be.
Did I turn it off?
Yeah, there it is. So.
Thank you. So day one, 2015, paleo was the hot thing. I don't know if you guys remember that, when paleo was all over the place. Everybody was trying to be paleo. It was CrossFit was big into paleo. So that's what we started with, was the paleo diet, and vegetarian, because I'm a vegetarian, so I couldn't leave that out. Not many people bought it, but but we did paleo. And our first partnership was with the paleo diet. And they're literally the founders of the paleo diet, is the company called the Paleo Diet. So that partnership immediately kicked us off and gave us a ton of brand equity, because they were such a known figure in the space. And then from there, we were able to build out other partnerships. But that was really the initial one that like kicked us off into growth.
So when you're thinking of like getting that partnership, what was the process? And I find oftentimes like founders don't necessarily go and seek those partnerships. If they're like, why would someone want to, partner with us? We don't have really a full-fledged product. We don't have a lot of revenue. We're still figuring things out. Like, where were you in that process, and what value did you provide to them to like ultimately lead to the partnership that led to this growth?
Yeah, so I always think about like giving more than I'm getting. There's an old concept by Gary Vaynerchuk, if you guys are familiar with him. It's like jab, 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 right hook. It's give, 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 then you ask. And we tried to always do that. It's like, what are you giving the partner? Not what are you asking the partner to do for you? And even in like your initial outreach to partners, trying to even set up a call, it's like, how are you giving them some sort of value in that outreach, or, saying you're going to give them value in the future, something like that. So for the paleo diet, they would love to be able to promote paleo meals. They don't want the logistics nightmare of making paleo meals. Like, that's the last thing anybody wants to do. Food manufacturing is not like the most fun or glamorous place to be in. So that was a big value add for them. And then we gave them a revenue share of the sales that they created. So couldn't say more about revenue sharing or profit sharing with partners. Like, that's how you get them like really excited to promote what you're talking about. Yeah.
Love it. And so so you start with kind of the website, and it sounded like you were doing deliveries through there.
Yep.
And then what like expanded into the app, and like what was the purpose for then like building that next iteration of it? Was it to identify a new customer that you were trying to go for, or was it like growing the value you were already providing for your existing customer base?
Yeah, so the app is actually a really weird story. We had been working with a developer who owned and created an app called Pocket Wad, and it was like the top CrossFit app at the time. And we had been starting to work with CrossFit more and more. And he was interested in getting more involved with us. We wanted to buy his app. So part of our Series A was literally just us absorbing him and the app for about $1 million of the Series A. And then in that process, we rebranded it. We added on like a nutrition component, because obviously we're food. And it took off like gangbusters. We added the ability to order food through it. So now all of a sudden people are like actually getting the product through it too. But yeah, I mean, it's about customer success, right? Because the more you can like track your food, you can think about your workouts, like now you're going to be more successful with our products.
So, as a logistics company to start, like that sounds super complicated for an emerging startup. Like, how did you kind of navigate that with like your team, and what infrastructure did you build within and then outsource, and how did you kind of approach that effort? Sorry, I'll pause there.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, like I just said, it's not a super glamorous space to be in. It's tough. We had to just start small with, like I said, one plan, the paleo plan, and then expand into, I don't know how many plans we have now, like 9 or 10 different plans and all the different meals that go into that. So I think simplicity is super key early on, especially if you do have something like logistically challenging. And the other piece is like, we just outsourced a lot of the stuff that we didn't have a core competency in. So we used UPS and FedEx, and we had people helping us make the food and buy the food. Like every piece that we could get help with, we took that opportunity to say, okay, we don't know what we're doing in this space. Like, I'm not an expert in what FedEx has built over the last how many years, right? But you do see the opposite oftentimes. Like, there's meal delivery companies doing their deliveries, and I think long term it can be a good play, but when you're starting with no money and not a lot of experience, it's really tough to go that route. So.
Right. And so would love to transition to kind of like your fundraising journey. So like what was some of the initial funding? Was it like the two of you putting initial capital in, or did you have some angel investors? Like what was your financing pathway to kind of where you're at now?
Yeah, so early days we did get some angel investors. I think they came after just me putting money in for a while. I probably put in like 150,000 to 200,000. I'm a weird saver, so I had saved like all this money from my sales career prior to this, and I had an exit prior to this at a company I was working for. So I just saved all this money, and I'm like, I guess I'll buy a house or start a business. And I ended up starting the business. And so a lot of my money initially, then we brought on some angels, which was like friends and family. There's so many pros and cons to you guys. I don't know how, like, has anyone done like angel investing or early? Yeah, a few people. Okay. There's a lot of pros and cons. So one is like, okay, you could make them a bunch of money and earn them back a bunch of money, but they also have to like see your journey and watch like the ups and downs and ask for, okay, when do I get my money back? And like, it's definitely more sticky than you might anticipate going into it. So I would just be like very thoughtful about how you approach the like early stage friends and family. And then from there, we got into our Series A, which I think Greg met him on a flight somewhere. Like the power of just like talking to people around you and getting to know folks is insane. I think they were literally just sitting next to each other on a flight.
There you go. Well, so I think, I mean, a key thing like to that is oftentimes I find, just because of like Shark Tank and other things in the way we've built like demo days, that we think a pitch for investment will happen in that, like, I'm going to stand in front of you at the pitch deck, but usually the first kind of discussion could be over a plane flight, or you meet someone, for a coffee to talk about it, and then you go into the pitch process. Was that like the only investor outside in that Series A, or was there other people a part of that as well?
Yeah, we did have other folks a part of it as well. I mean, the biggest thing I would say is just like get involved, like things like this, getting involved in the community more and more, getting to know folks that, are interested in this type of stuff. I have several friends now that are like dying to invest in startup companies, and they're hard to find for them, just as hard as it is for startups to find the investors. So like, they're out there. It's just a matter of like making the right connections to find them, because they literally have the same problem you do. They don't know where you are or like how to get to you, type thing.
Sure, that makes sense. So I know you're kind of, just from conversation, you're kind of transitioning to another venture.
Yes.
Would love to just tee it up for what you're kind of working on next, and how you might be able to support founders in that process.
Sure. So my brother and I hired a CEO at the beginning of this year, and he's super excited about food manufacturing and super passionate about that piece of the business, which is something that as it's matured has been more of the focus. So we're really excited to have him. Greg and I are both on the board still, but we've like stepped back out of the day-to-day. Because like I said, it's been 9 years, so we're excited to start new things, which we are doing now. So new company is I'm still working on my pitch, guys.
There you go. We'll get a practice.
We'll get a practice in. It's called
Stand up and here's your deck.
It's essentially, it was born out of Trifecta in that I oftentimes was making like growth plans for people on my team and trying to help them get from like one role to the next role. They wanted to level up, but I couldn't find anything out there that gave them like a direct path, step by step. This is what you need to do. So that's what the new company concept is literally giving people growth plans to like go from A to B or B to C within different roles. So
I like it.
hopefully I'll have a website up soon and I can actually share it a little bit more.
There you go. Well, I think speaking to that, one of the things we chatted briefly about was like the switch from like founder to CEO and kind of like, okay, early stages of like just figuring things out to like, how do we then drive efficiency as we scale? Is that kind of part of your thought process in looking at this business? And like, what are some of the tools that maybe you've used? I know like EOS and some of those other things that are common. Like, what things have you implemented throughout the Trifecta journey?
Yeah, good question. We do use EOS, and then
for those, that's Entrepreneur Operating System. If you don't know what that is.
Yep, super helpful to add some structure once you need some structure. I don't know what they recommend. It's probably like 15, 20 employees or something. You start to get into that type of stuff. But yeah, I think the like old sage wisdom of hiring slowly is incredibly important regardless of how fast you're growing. We were growing like a rocket ship, like just flying, and so we started like being like butts in seats, let's go. And it's not a good way to hire, and it ends up just having a lot of people that like don't work out. And so I think that's one of the biggest things we talk about we could have done better in terms of like the founder CEO transition. And then, I don't know, just like learning as fast as you possibly can about like every aspect of your business, because the parts that you don't know enough about will be what slow you down. So like, I'll give another failure example.
Sure.
We tried to launch Magento for our website with a team of like 20 developers at the time. We spent 2 years trying to launch this fucking thing, and we never got it launched. And I know you're shaking your head because it's the most absurd thing you've ever heard. And the reason was Greg and I don't have a background in development. We didn't have the right people on the team and them telling us what we needed to know and the resources to figure it out. So going back, I would have just dove in and like actually really gotten involved. But instead I was like, oh, they'll figure it out. And 2 years later, I had to be like, scrap the whole project. This is ridiculous. So yeah, just like shoring up your weaknesses is really, really, really important too.
Love it. All right. Well, I will see what questions you all have, and I will repeat it back just so we have it for recording reasons. But what questions do you all have for Liz?
Hey there. Thanks, by the way. I want to go back to how you were saying, like leverage experts, like domain experts, in regards to profitability, and how you think about profitability and your fundraising path. There's enough there to respond to.
Yeah, I think so. I think the market and investors are looking for different things at different times. So early stage for us, investors in the market generally, we're looking for like, are you growing really fast? We don't give a shit about profitability, and is the revenue there? Like that was pretty much it. And so we were able to raise capital. I mean, we were marginally profitable in the early days, but like not super. And the thing that sold them was the hyper growth. I still think that sells people today, but I do think there's more of a focus on profitability today. I think that's much more valued, and we should have you answer this question. But I think that you have to pay attention to what they care about in the current environment is what I would say, because it does change. It's not just always this or that. If you can have both, great, but we're not all movie stars. Like that's.
So did you know you were going to go on a rocket ship, or did you at some point were you trying to debate slow organic growth and profitability versus the VC route? How did you decide that?
How did we decide that? I think I think we always kind of were going to go down the raise capital and grow it as fast as we could. Maybe not always, but once we had gotten an enormous amount of traction within the first like couple months, we were like, oh wow, this could be really big. And so both our minds just like went that way. We grew pretty much organically from 2015 to 2017 when we did our Series A. And then even then, all that did was allow us to turn on ads. So we hadn't run any ads up until that point. We had just grown organically. And then all of a sudden, that was like more fuel on the fire and went really fast. Yeah.
So in the early days of Trifecta Nutrition, what was your angle into the market? Did you try to like just get in front of people before they saw HelloFresh, like do user acquisition,
Yeah.
or did you try to outvalue HelloFresh, or just target like a different audience?
Yeah, it's a good question. So HelloFresh is, I guess, like an indirect competitor.
Not specifically, but just like the dominant.
Oh, in general, yeah. So we went very health and fitness, and really focused on people trying to lose weight, get in shape, and build muscle. Those were kind of like the three categories. So some sort of like health improvement is what they're after. And we found that the most effective way to do that was not through doctors, which is what you would think, like, oh yeah, like people go to their doctor for health. Literally not at all. They look at like, oh, who's the fit influencer? That's who I'm going to go and take my advice from. So that's what we did is we went to a bunch of, CrossFitters, UFC fighters, like you name it, anything in that space we brought on and basically just fed them for free is really all we had to do. And they were like, sounds good, I'll promote you, so.
Yeah, Laura.
Just a question to give people an idea of the scale of Trifecta right now. Like, how many meals do you deliver, I don't know, a day, a week, a month? You probably have some.
I don't know if I know these numbers anymore. Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the year, so January's boom time for us because new year, new me, right? At the beginning of the year, we were doing several thousand new orders a day. So it was extremely fast. And now, we're probably in the hundreds of orders a day, like through slower times. But it's really cyclical, which makes operations super fun, as you can imagine.
That reminds me of one more question.
Sure.
You were featured in a documentary on Netflix.
Oh, yes,
and
yes.
How did that connection happen?
I'm trying to remember. I think we connected with them through our PR guy had reached out to them for this like Stanford study. Basically, it was like they took twins from they took a twin and did each. I'm doing a terrible job explaining this. Basically, they fed one twin vegan and one twin like clean food, and saw like which one improved the most. And that came out in January. It was a Netflix docuseries, and we had provided all the food. And so immediately Jan 1, people were like, oh, vegan's the new thing. So all of a sudden we're like crazy trying to make all this vegan food that we were not prepared for. But yeah, I think it was just an outreach. I mean, so much of outreach is just like doing a ton of it. It seems like painful and like you're cutting your teeth, and but it's so worth it because you just need to get one out of every like 20 or 30 outreaches to hit, and then all of a sudden you're creating some traction. Yeah.
Jane.
Regarding your marketing, did you find there was a specific period where things just started taking off? Did it have to do with when you built the partnership relationships and were able to kind of get your wagon to that train, or was it the advertising that started that really got you going?
Do you mind just repeating it so everyone?
Oh, sure. So the question was kind of in terms of marketing, like what was the thing that like kicked off the growth, correct? Yeah. Okay. I think the biggest one was there's two probably. So having a really good channel mix of all the different, whether it's social media, email marketing, organic SEO, like all these there's all the channels that you guys are very familiar with. Making sure you're strong in all of them. And in order to do that, most of it is like, okay, we're on a 20-mile march every day. Cool. Partnerships is the same, and most people like completely ignore it. But it is also a 20-mile march of doing 10 outreaches a day or whatever it may be. And then you'll have a constant stream of new partners bringing in a new audience or a new distribution channel. And that was the game changer for us that like completely propelled us compared to, similar companies. They may have a good marketing mix, but they were missing that whole segment of like constantly dumping in new audiences. Yeah.
We got time.
Influencers on the partnership side or on the marketing side?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
The influencers,
Uh-huh.
do you put those in partnerships or do you put those in marketing?
So we did it a few different ways over the years. What I found is that it needs to be a salesperson handling it, because at least in my experience, I tried to get several marketing folks to do it over the years, and it's much more similar to a sales role, because you're doing so much outreach and like getting people excited and selling them and signing a contract. Like it's all the pieces of a sales role, but what you're selling is the partnership and marketing, which a salesperson can learn. So I tend to not recommend putting a marketing person in there. Yeah.
We got time for maybe one or two more questions if we have them. Yeah.
You said you had your new businesses going. How do you think different that you were going to use from your first aspiration to touch that so
Everything. No. So much though.
Not deliver food.
Yeah, I mean the logistics is really tough. I think this is such contrarian advice, but at least for me, I pushed myself so hard with Trifecta. I was 25 when I started it. I'm 35 now, and it was like 9 of the hardest years. The most fun, and I really am glad I had it, but like I don't plan on pushing myself to that extent round 2. So that's just like a personal one for me. I still want to work hard. I still want to like do big things, but I want to like have a weekend here or there, or like, a date night or something would be nice. Exactly.
Mix in a little life here and there.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the other big one is like, I didn't know how to manage super well early on, so I did a reasonably poor job, especially in the early years. And I think management can be distilled down to setting clear expectations and what will happen if they meet or don't meet those expectations. And that seems really simple, but like actually executing that and doing that with your team is super duper important, and it will make the difference between a successful team and a not successful team. So I think if I could have done a better job of that, and it's already so much easier now because I'm starting fresh, but trying to think of any other big ones. I already mentioned hiring slower and like really making sure they're a good fit. Firing quicker sounds terrible, but
We hear that a lot.
yeah, it's definitely a thing. Like we all are people and we care about people. Like we don't want to do it, but when you know, and sitting on it for several more months is not going to be helpful for you in any possible way. So
We got Ben.
Is that your salesperson? Was it kind of firing and hiring? How was it contractors or employees?
with the new company,
No, like the hire faster.
What's more effective? What have you found to be more effective?
employees or contractors. For sales, I have never done contractors, so I don't know the answer to that. In my experience, though, it really varies on the role whether or not you should bring it in-house or contract it out. Is the role enough to be a full-time role? Do you need like a lot of control over it? Like, should it be in-house? There's an enormous amount of stuff I think you can outsource, but you just have to kind of be careful with it. And I think, especially in the early days, it's easier to contract some stuff so that you don't get over your skis in terms of paying people. Like if you're pre-revenue or very little revenue, like contracting is great because then you can be like, cool, I can't afford you next month. Pause. We'll come back to it in another month or something like that.
All right, Ethan, last question here.
I already got to ask a couple, so is there anyone who hasn't asked yet that wants to ask a question?
So kind.
I know.
Yours.
Such
Yours
a gentleman.
So for your new company, is it fair to say it's like gamifying the corporate ladder with like the clear progression and level up system?
I like the gamifying. I don't have gamification in it yet, but I hope to.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I was going to say, with that, are you going to focus more on like high growth companies like startups? Because I know for a lot of like, like kind of static, stale, big corporate. My mom works for like a major insurance firm, so that's kind of the experience I'm coming from. It's like promotions are like, well, when someone dies or retires in 10 years, you can have the promotion. So, are you focusing more on high growth companies, or do you have a strategy for just like normal larger firms? Or
Yeah, exactly to your point. It is much easier in a high growth company to find room for those promotions and move people up a ladder. Right now, I'm actually going to go B2C first because I won't have a ton of programs built out. So it won't really make sense for me to spend the time to get into businesses. So I'm just going to go B2C and have it be like an inbound funnel. But then I will move into high growth businesses.
So is it something like the managers opt into, or is it just like, hey, you're a data analyst, the AI has averaged like, 1,000 data analyst roles, and these are like the 5 things based on your industry that you should do or promote, or like you go to the boss and the boss like signs off on it, or the opposite?
So essentially what it is right now is like you would go sign up for the program if you want to move from your role to the next role, and it's very niche. So it's like literally right now, if you are a sales director and you want to be a head of sales, this is your program. Like I've gone that niche into like different areas. Because I think that's what's missing. Like that's what I really struggled to find was like that really niche down. So we'll see if I find product market fit. we gotta get there, but I definitely think there's something there.
Awesome. All right, in closing us out, what's something that we as a community can do to support you and Trifecta or your next venture here?
As a community, support me. I was going to say you guys are welcome to reach out if you need anything.
Well, we beat you to the punch.
No, I appreciate everyone coming. It was wonderful to talk to y'all, and hopefully you could hear me back there. So,
if not, we'll send you the recording.
Yeah.
If it worked. So, all right. Well, let's give it up for Liz. Thank you so much. Just a couple quick announcements before we head back to the networking. We do have our Global Entrepreneurship Week coming up, which is the week of November 18th through 22nd. We will have our next startup happy hour on that Tuesday, which is the 19th. We're working on the location, but it's likely to be Limelight on Alhambra. And we will have a panel discussion of some early stage founders that have been getting some traction recently and want to have a great conversation there. And please just do keep an eye out for a number of our events. We have a whole set of programming coming your way that week. And yes, if you're someone who wants to mentor people, we're looking for mentors as well as entrepreneurs for our mentor sprint, which will be on November 20th from 10:30 to 12. It's speed dating for mentors, but really it's a great way. It's more so about getting feedback in 15-minute little sprints, and then you're on to the next mentor to get more advice and connections. So highly recommend checking that out. If you don't subscribe to the Startup Digest or the Carlson Center newsletter. I don't know how you got here, but nonetheless, we're excited to have you. But no, joking aside, what? You just follow the crowd. There's a big group coming here. But other than that, appreciate you spending the time and energy to come here. And thank you again, Liz, for sharing your experience and expertise. And best of luck in the new venture.
Thank you.
And with that, as my good friend Laura would say, you're free to move about the cabin. So thank you.